The pain was a dull, persistent throb behind my ribs. It had been 63 years since I was born. A long time to live, longer still to ache like this. I lay in the hospital bed, the sterile sheets pulled up to my chin. My body felt brittle. 3 days post-surgery, a routine bypass that had felt anything but. I was dependent. Dependent on nurses, on pills, on the slow, deliberate rhythm of recovery. Vulnerable. That was the word. My phone, a small black rectangle on the bedside table, buzzed. It was Marcus, my lawyer. I almost ignored it. What else could go wrong? I answered. David. Bad news. A summons just landed on my desk. His voice was clipped. Professional. A bad sign. Stalking. Restraining order. The works. I closed my eyes. The fluorescent light of the hospital room seemed to bore into my skull. Stalking. Who am I supposed to be stalking? A nurse. The orderly. A dry, bitter laugh escaped me. My chest tightened, not from the surgery, but from the sheer, bewildering absurdity. I could barely walk to the bathroom. I am in a hospital bed. Marcus. Sarah Jenkins, he said, ignoring my sarcasm. You remember Sarah? From accounting. Filed a complaint last week. Says you have been following her, calling her, showing up at her gym. Says you are harassing her. Sarah Jenkins, a woman I barely knew. She was maybe 30. Bright. Polite. We had exchanged pleasantries in the elevator perhaps a dozen times. This was impossible. My life had been defined by loss, by absence. First my son, then my marriage. I had nothing left to lose. I felt a cold detachment, a fatalistic certainty that whatever fresh hell this was, I would endure it. Or not, it did not matter much anymore. The nurses brought me photographs. Marcus had emailed them to the hospital. Printed, laminated, evidence. One showed a man in a dark hoodie, his face partially obscured, standing outside Sarah Jenkins's apartment building. Another, a blurry shot from a security camera, depicted the same figure at her gym, staring into the windows. Name, the build, the slight stoop of the shoulders, the familiar gait. It was me, or someone who looked exactly like me. The dates are clear. Marcus explained over the phone. Last Tuesday, you were sedated. Wednesday, you had your surgery. Thursday, you were in recovery. No one leaves the ICU without a trail of paperwork. This is impossible. But the evidence, however absurd, piled up. Phone records, dozens of calls to Sarah Jenkins's number, all from a burner phone. Untraceable, yet texts had been sent. Cryptic messages signed with my name. There were eyewitness accounts too. Gym staff, Sarah's neighbors, all describing me. David Porter, calm, quiet, 63 years old. A man who had just had his chest cracked open. A man who could not lift a glass of water without assistance. The horror was not of legal repercussions. It was the feeling of my identity being rewritten, hijacked. Someone was wearing my face, mimicking my life, creating a distorted reflection of me that was actively malicious. My name, what little remained of my good reputation, was being tarnished. I saw the doubt in the nurses' eyes, the subtle shift in their demeanor. They were kind, but they were also trained to observe. Then, 3 days after I was discharged, still unsteady on my feet, the phone rang at 2:47 a.m. His name lit up the screen. Michael, my dead son. His contact photo, a smiling boy of 18, stared back at me. My heart seized. The number had been disconnected for 20 years. I pressed answer. Dad, where am I? His voice, confused, scared. It was him. It could not be. This was another layer of impossibility, another assault on my already fractured reality. I heard his panicked breathing. He remembered the accident. He remembered dying. He felt wrong. He found my number. Then the line went dead. The number, again, out of service. I was losing my mind. This was the deeper fear, not imprisonment for stalking, but being believed to be someone I was not. The distinction between what appeared true and what was true. The lawyer, Marcus, was already investigating the stalking claims. He hired a private investigator, a former detective named Thorns. Thorne was a quiet man with tired eyes, methodical in his approach. He looked at the surveillance photos, the phone logs. He listened to my rambling account of Michael's call, patiently, without judgment, which was more than I expected. Someone is going to a great deal of trouble to impersonate you, Mr. Porter, Thorne observed, tapping a pen against the blurry image of my alleged doppelganger. And they are good. Too good. They even got the way you hold your shoulders. The investigation began to yield results, not quickly. Piece by painful piece, security footage from a coffee shop near Sarah's apartment. From before my surgery, it showed the man. He bought coffee. He left a tip. He smiled at the barista. He was me, but he was younger. Not by much, but undeniably so. Maybe in his late 40s, early 50s. It was not a perfect clone, but close enough to deceive casual observers. Close enough to deceive even me. In a fleeting glance, Thorne uncovered a social media profile. David Porter. Similar photos, posts about my past, posts about my son, Michael. Fake, but crafted with chilling accuracy. Pulling details from old news articles about Michael's accident, from my own public profiles. Phone number spoofing had been used to make calls appear from my real number. This man was not just a look-alike. He was meticulously reconstructing my identity, brick by brick, into something sinister. But the calls from Michael, they continued. Sporadic, terrifying. He gave me an address, 4247 Riverside Avenue. Apartment 8, Moorfield, West Virginia, 2 states away. He spoke of being called Marcus Powell, of looking in a mirror and seeing a face that was almost his. He said he found my number because it was the only one he remembered. The phone company denied any activity on Michael's old number. They thought I was deluded by grief. The stalking investigation took a sudden turn. Thorne traced a burner phone, used for some of the calls to a purchase made by cash. But the buyer was captured on camera. A young man, early 30s, not the older look-alike from the coffee shop. This was confusing. Who was the true manipulator? The younger man was discreet. He worked at a small courier company. He had no discernible connection to me. Yet, his face was vaguely familiar. It gnawed at me. Then, the connection clicked. The young man, he had worked for a competitor of my old company, a firm I had helped dismantle in a merger years ago. There was a layoff. He was among those who lost their jobs. A grudge, subtle, long simmering. He was using the older look-alike, paying him, feeding him informations. The look-alike was merely an actor, a hired ghost. Simultaneously, the ghost of my son had given me an address. I gave it to Thorne. He went there. The building was condemned. But apartment 8, it was immaculate, filled with photos of my family, photos of Michael, older, living a life he never had, and a note, in Michael's handwriting, from Marcus Powell, a man who woke up with amnesia after an accident on November 3rd, 2005. The same night Michael died, the same hospital. The confrontation took place in Marcus's office, a stark room overlooking the city. Marcus, my lawyer, and Thorne, the private investigator. sat across from me. Facing us was the young man. His name was Arthur Vance, and the older look-alike, a gaunt man named Robert Shaw. Arthur Vance, thin-lipped, nervous, held a blank stare. Robert Shaw, impassive. Thorne laid out the evidence. Security footage, cross-referenced cell tower data, phone spoofing records, a payment trail from Arthur Vance to Robert Shaw, a detailed plan found on Vance's computer outlining how to discredit me. He wanted to destroy my reputation, not out of grand malice, but petty resentment. He had targeted Sarah Jenkins because he knew she had a clean record, and her accusations would be taken seriously. He had used publicly available information about my son's death to craft a compelling, emotionally resonant fake social media presence to make the impersonation more complete. A final, cruel touch. Arthur Vance looked at the floor. Robert Shaw remained silent. He wanted to make me a monster, I said, my voice flat. While I lay in a hospital bed, Marcus spoke, his voice cold. Mr. Vance, this is a felony. Impersonation, stalking, electronic harassment. Just as Marcus finished, my phone vibrated. It was Dr. Chen. I had called her, frantically, after Thorne confirmed the details of Michael's death at County General, the second patient, the phone records, the conflicting reports. She had run the DNA. I answered. Mr. Porter. Her voice was tight, thin. The results are in. Marcus Powell is your son. Michael is alive. The room blurred. Arthur Vance looked up, startled by the sound of my voice, the tremor in it. Robert Shaw, for the first time, showed a flicker of emotion, curiosity. The world shifted. One truth was laid bare, ugly and small. Another truth, vast and impossible, unfurled itself. The climax was brief, sharp, controlled. The manipulator was exposed, but the real weight, the real revelation, had just begun. My physical recovery was slow. The bypass surgery had taken its toll, but the knowledge that Michael was alive, that he was Marcus Powell, infused a fragile strength into me. I flew to Moorfield. The reunion was awkward. He was a stranger with my son's eyes, a man molded by 20 years of amnesia, of living a fabricated life. We took it slow. Conversations in diners, recounting fragmented memories of a childhood he could not recall. He was 38. I had mourned a 19-year-old. The boy I buried was gone, irrevocably. The man I found was a ghost to himself. I called Mary, my ex-wife. Her voice was distant, polite. I told her everything. The stalking. The manipulator. Michael, alive. There was a pause, a long, heavy silence. I moved on. David, she finally said, her voice softer, but firm. I built a new life. He would be a stranger to me now. I cannot go back. I understood. She had needed to forget to survive. I had needed to remember. Grief had carved different paths for us. I never saw Arthur Vance or Robert Shaw again. The legal process took its course. A quiet conviction. They were small men, their malice a small thing, compared to the vastness of what I had found. Truth does not always prevail quickly, but it always leaves a trace, a call log, a medical record, a subtle difference in a photograph. Technology, which had been used to warp my identity, was also the instrument of discovery. The phone calls that brought me to him, the DNA that confirmed him, my reputation, briefly tarnished by a petty grievance, faded into the background. What mattered was the quiet, steady reestablishment of a connection that should never have been broken. Human endurance, I realized, was not about weathering the storm, but about seeking the light, however faint, that pierces through it. The world still felt heavy, quiet, but now it was also reflective. And a man named Marcus Powell, who was also my son Michael, was learning who he was, one story at a time.